I think there is so much discouragement and lies around what students can do in schools. Sometimes the best route to take is to start something organic in your school, like a prayer meeting.
Hey, welcome to the FreeRefills Podcast, where we talk about the realities of leading in youth ministry. Our hope is that you leave refreshed, refueled, and re-energized to carry on with your work in youth ministry. My name is Wayne Morgan. I work with the National Network of Youth Ministries, and so do my friends Johnny Radcliffe and Steve Cullum. Welcome this morning, guys. We're talking about praying for schools. It's something that's easy to do, but we often put it to the back burner. I'm super excited to have this conversation, kind of elevate it for our friends in youth ministry.
And Wayne, you may not know this, but we just had a focused push on this with National Network of Youth Ministry. Did you know that, Wayne? Steve, did you guys hear about this?
I did.
I
know
heard
that.
something.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Steve was on all those calls and mapping this out with us here too. So it was, listen, we're talking about footprints on campus. You know it. You love it. You've been reposting it. You've been praying for schools on campus all August. And I tell you what, it just wrapped up here, and it was a fantastic exercise for us as an NNYM team, for our local network leaders, for just people jumping on. It was such a good push to get people out praying on campus for students. I thought it was great, and I need it in my life. So I'm right there with you, Wayne. Praying on school campuses is something we definitely need to talk about.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see, all the photos pour in from all over the country and individuals, churches getting out there and praying for the schools at the very beginning of the school year, and hopefully setting up for See You at the Pole, which is student-led, and all these other prayer campaigns that are hopefully going to happen throughout the whole school year.
Our prayer is that this kind of gives hope to Christians. I think a lot of the times there's so much fear around the school, but we're called to pray. We're not called to just be, yes, there's a civic duty we have for certain things to, go to school board meetings and stuff. But man, there's kids on school campus that nobody else is praying for. And so for us as Christians to pray for hope and peace. And I mean, we've heard stories about people praying over violence at their schools. We have people praying over the academic excellence of schools. So there's a lot of things that we can unite ourselves around with the hope of the gospel, with the hope of redemption. And we just kind of want to remind our community and the, youth ministry community at large, hey, this is an obligation that nobody else can do. We are the only ones that can jump in and appeal to heaven for our schools this way.
Ooh, Wayne, can I tell a story similar to that right there? Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is how I almost got arrested for footprints on campus.
Persecution of the gospel.
That's right. Isn't that the most noble thing you've ever heard? Guys, I was praying for schools and they took me away in handcuffs. No, not quite that dramatic, but this is hilarious. I was in a meeting during Footprints on Campus the week of it, but this was a non-related meeting, and I get a message from my wife, and it just said, "Call me." And that's usually it's usually a child is misbehaving, right? Or a dog barfed on the floor, something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was like, "Can it wait?" And she said, "No." And I was like, "Oh man." And then you do that thing as a husband where you're like, okay, what sin did I create here? Did I forget to run the dishwasher? Did I not make the bed? You know what I mean? Like you just kind of racking your brain. Wasn't prepared for this. She was like, hey, there are 2 cops at the door who want to ask you some questions.
They came to your house?
They came to my house. Yes. Turns out.
Your plate got read? What's going on here, man? This is deep.
Yes. So turns out we were at a school praying before, and we met with some people, and someone brought chalk and was like writing some stuff, just like, hey, praying for the school, that kind of thing. Well, it was worse than that, because currently where we're at right now, there's some tension with the school board, and this guy said that, and like both sides of the aisle are riled up at each other in the school district. And then we show up and we write Joshua 1:3 on the sidewalk that says, every place you step your foot, I will give you.
Oh, no. Oh my word.
So they're like, oh my word, are people like coming to take over the school by force? Like, is this a warning?
Wow.
We're just going to march around it 7 times and
It's going to
Walls
fall to the
come
ground in the
falling
name of the
down.
Lord. Absolutely. So I had 2 cops just kind of being like, hey, what are you planning here?
Wow.
And I tell you this, so, and this is always an encouragement to make sure that as Christians, we're not the most offended people out there.
Yeah.
I could have turned this into like we can't even pray on our campuses without it being an issue. And it wasn't that. It was, we just got to check in and please don't use chalk. I'm like, okay, totally fair.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things. And I tell you this, even after checking in, both the local officer and the school officer was like, this is a great thing. Keep it up.
Yeah.
So it was just a reminder that sometimes when we talk about praying on school campuses, we get a little weird, we get a little self-conscious, and sometimes we almost get arrested. But besides that, I think that we build up this tension more in our mind than sometimes is present. Do you guys agree with that?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think, and our students are dealing with that too. Like that's what they're going through all the time. And I even thought that honestly, when I was posting our prayer schedule online, I'm like, man, I'm putting this out there where people are going to be able to find it. And what people are going to not like this and potentially come and, picket against us or tell the cops, even though it is legal, or all these different things. And those thoughts went through my head as an adult, as a leader of a youth group. How much are these thoughts going through the students that we're leading as well, that they're like, but what if someone stands up against me, and what if this and what if that? And so they end up not praying or not starting that club that they want to, or not sharing the gospel like they want to, because we've built it up so much in our heads. And us as adults and us as leaders, we're not immune to that.
I love the acrostic that says, fear is false expectations that appear real.
Oh, hold on a second. Ho. Say that again, just slower.
False expectations that appear real. And we've got a fear culture where we've heard of one person that got persecuted, and so we're instantly convinced that no one else wants to be prayed for. But maybe, just maybe, this is a good illustration and an encouragement to us to check in on the school and just say, hey, listen, we're going to be praying for your school as a community. Is there anything that we can pray for? Remove all the politics, remove all the stuff. What do you guys need to be prayed for here at the school? Because a lot of the times we do it covertly, right? And then we're surprised that it broke some sort of policy. And then we protest the policy. But what if we had courage enough to walk into the building as leaders to go, hey, we are just wondering, we're going to be praying for you guys. And is it okay to pray on your sidewalk? Because does your prayer have like a limitation on how far it can go? Like, do you have, are you offended if you can't pray on the school grounds? Like, you pray from your church for the school and it's across the street, you're offended that you can't walk on campus? Like, so I think that there's a certain amount of like, let's be courageous people and go and ask the questions. And if they say, well, we don't need any prayer, okay, that's fine. And then the other part about praying on campus, the school invites people on for sports. The school invites people on for events. And so if you know what the prayer requests are, but you're not allowed on campus, you're still going to your students' games. You're going to, band events, and you can pray through the hallways for the requests that they've asked for, if praying on campus really matters that much to you. So defacing school property, Johnny, though, that is another level of
well, I think the spray paint took it across the line. I don't know.
Yeah, this is another space where we as Christians think it's a good idea. Joshua 1:8, man, or Joshua 1:3. Okay. Somebody looked it up and they were like,
out of context.
Let's go check that out with 2 cops, not just one.
But bottom line, my big takeaway from the whole event is that when you show up in person, man, God does something within you that is just different. When you look at the school, and even if you do a lap around the building, even if it's from the public sidewalk, if they have that there, when you get to see the context, when you get to lock eyes with it and see what you're praying for, it does something in you. So I definitely encourage you, even if you're like, hey, I missed the boat with Footprints on Campus. It's not about doing it during a week. It's about just praying for your teens. So take some time this week, maybe even if it's just a step of getting the habit of when you drive by a school, pray for it, whatever it is. If we really believe that prayer works and that prayer is important to what we're doing, we need to make sure that we're doing everything to incorporate it into everything we do.
Yeah, Johnny, that's one of the reasons that we had on our recent network conversations. Every month we have a conversation for network coordinators to just give them something to think about and encourage them along the way. And so Steve was on that last network conversation, and we're using a part of that today for the podcast. So Steve, why don't you tell us what you talked about in the network conversations?
Yeah, it was really cool to have Olivia Williamson from Claim Your Campus on the network conversation, just to talk about the importance of prayer and how we can not only encourage our students to be praying for their campuses more, how we can be praying for the campuses more, and just make prayer a regular part of our life. One of the things she talked about is how a lot of times we are, in relationship with the God of the universe, but how often do we really talk to him on a regular basis and teach our students to talk to him on a regular basis for the things that really matter? So it was a really great conversation, and excited for you guys to hear a little bit about it.
Olivia Williamson. I feel like this is a reunion because I know many of you and love all of you. So it's so great to be here. And this conversation is awesome. I am all about this generation learning how to pray. I am a little haunted by the question, how can a generation know Jesus if they're not talking with him? And I'm really intentional about those words, not just talking to him, but with him. And hearing the voice of God, learning how to pray, learning how to sit down and spend time with Jesus changed my life in middle and high school. And it changes my life every day. And so I don't just want to teach students to pray. That's what I do through Claim Your Campus. I'm traveling all over the country to talk to students about how they can spend time in prayer in their schools once a week, but also in their personal time in their life. It's really, really important to me because it changed my life. And something that I absolutely love is prayer walks. And so I'm excited about these conversations today. Been doing that all over Kansas City, where I'm from, but in many schools all over the country. I am married. My husband's name is Kyle. Many of you know him. We get to work together, which is awesome. He's on our staff, and we get to travel. We actually just finished a 7-month road trip, and we were living in an RV. We were traveling, staying with friends in their basements, staying with our parents, just wherever, the Lord led us for those 7 months. We were doing camps all summer. And so we officially bought a home. We are now planted in Kansas City, expecting our first baby in January, and excited for what this next season holds, but super hopeful and encouraged by what we got to see all over the nation this year. We got to interact with thousands of middle and high school students, parents, churches. And so it has been incredible to see what God's doing. And I'm just really encouraged and excited to be here today.
Just from your personal experience, what is the impact of prayer on schools? How does prayer make the difference in the lives of teenagers and students in their schools?
Well, like I said, prayer changed my life in middle and high school. And I personally saw amazing things happen in my high school through our prayer group. I remember you would walk in the main hallway every morning, and if you turned to the right, there was the cafeteria, and leading to the cafeteria was a really wide open hallway, and that's where our prayer group decided to meet. It was a space where it was easy to get to when you walked in the front door, but also people could see what we were doing, and we always left a spot open in our circle for people to join. And we would get people joining that I wasn't friends with, didn't know super well, but I knew they were Christians, and they would come and pray with us. And it created great connection and great community in the classrooms and hallways because I was meeting more believers. But I also remember there was one girl, and now this detail I cannot remember, but she had either pink or blue hair. I can't remember, but she had a really bright colored hair. And I was like, how have I never seen this girl before? Because you could not miss her. Her hair was so bright. She came up to our group and she sat down, and we weren't really expecting her to sit down. No one really knew her. But as she sat in the group, she just shared what she was struggling with and what she was going through in her life. She shared, I hate being at home and I hate being at school. And I don't know where I belong and I don't know where to go. And I saw this group. And it was such a cool opportunity for me to see there are people hurting on my campus that we have no idea what's really going on. And we got to share the love of Jesus with her and pray over her. And since that moment, it's opened my eyes to not just like big moments, but even those small moments where God really impacts individuals in our schools because we are praying. There are so many stories that I could tell. One of those stories is a student named Zeke. He is from Ohio, and he started a prayer meeting in high school. But his senior year, in December of last year, he heard the Lord invite him to pray for 30 friends to come to know Jesus before he graduated in his school. And so he brought that to his prayer group. He said, guys, this sounds crazy, but I really feel led to pray for 30 people to come to know Jesus. Would you pray with me? And surprisingly to him, his group started joining him in prayer. And he thought he would be the only one trying to do something about it. He thought, I'm going to have to share with 30 people and try to, share the gospel and evangelize by myself. But he started to see his group sharing their faith. One of the group members shared his faith with his girlfriend, and she came to know Jesus. And then one thing after another, they saw 22 students come to know Jesus by the time that he graduated. He even led a worship night at his school. That's Enlightened Students, the worship movement that I'm a part of, and had a salvation moment. And I'm just going to say that he forgot to count the number of people who responded. And so I'm kind of believing that 30 people got saved because he gave a great gospel message. He invited people to respond, but he just forgot to count the numbers. And so even after he graduated and just seeing all that God has done, he's been able to share his testimony with students all over the country saying, God hears our prayers, and showing up to pray matters because it's going to lead us to action on our campus. And I've seen it over and over again in this generation.
So practically, in places where it's a little bit more challenging or across the board, how do we create this culture of prayer for schools and prayer in schools?
What's really important to me when I talk to students is to remind them that the one person who says yes really matters. What I hear often, which I'm sure all of you hear, is students saying, there are no other Christians in my school. I don't know who would join me. Our group would be small. It would be sad. No one would show up. And I just don't think those are good enough reasons to not show up to pray. I think about people like Daniel, who showed up by himself to pray over his city and lived that lifestyle of prayer. And obviously he had friends around him. I think about Jesus, who retreated to pray by himself. Is there not power in you showing up, even if it's just you? His disciples kept falling asleep, and he kept telling them, pray, like, stay awake with me and pray. And he continued to pray. And sometimes that's how students are feeling is, guys, come on, like, wake up, let's pray. We got to do this for our school. But I love to encourage them to say, even if you are the only one, that is a start and that is a movement. You showing up to pray for your school is changing it, not because of the numbers or because of what your group looks like, but because of the one you are praying to. And so I think the best way to see movements, especially in hard areas to break through and areas where there's not a ton of Christian clubs or presence in the campus, it's finding that one. And I really believe that the Lord has those people in place, but they need the confidence and the support from people like us to say, you are the one. Oh, there's fireworks on my screen. You are the one to start this movement. And there's not power in numbers. Yes, there's power when we agree in prayer, like the Lord talks about where 2 or 3 are gathered. But really to see a movement start, I really believe it just takes one person to say yes. And so I encourage students, even if you are the only one that shows up, I believe God can move. And I'll just share really quick. There's a student in Kansas, and I've been able to mentor her for the past few years. She went to a Catholic high school and knew that she needed awakening in her school. So many students were just sent to that school and didn't really know Jesus. And she wanted to see awakening and revival on her campus. And so started a prayer meeting, and she showed up by herself for 3 months and was so discouraged, was so down about it. She'd come to me and say, "Is this working? Does this matter? I'm praying for my friends to come to know Jesus, and they are not showing up to this meeting. Other people are not seeing the vision that I have for my school." And she kept going. And after 3 months, one day she asked a friend that she's asked several times, and her friend was like, "All right, we'll come." And she brought a couple of her friends. And by the end of her senior year, 10 to 15 people showed up every week to pray with her. And she got to lead 4 of her friends to Jesus before she graduated. And so I hear stories like that. And I just encourage students, be like Sydney, who knows that she's called, who knows that her campus matters. And she was the one that said yes. And that can start something that maybe we can't even imagine, but we never know the importance and the other side of that yes.
But with that, how, as myself, as a youth leader, as a network coordinator, as the rest of us in youth ministry supporting teenagers, how best can we give them the strategies and the support and the encouragement that they need?
So I think there is so much discouragement and lies around what students can do in schools, right? But what we often encourage students to reclaim your campus is sometimes the best route to take is to start something organic in your school, like a meeting, like a prayer meeting. That's what we encourage a lot of our students to do. Sometimes going through the school takes a really long time. Sometimes they can say no. There's a lot of hoops they have to go through to start something on their campus. And so just from our experience, this is what I've seen that's worked really well. Even as they're trying to start a new club, waiting for the process, filling out the paperwork for their school, I encourage them, start a prayer meeting now. While you're waiting for the club to get approved, while you're waiting to hear back from your principal, start a prayer meeting. Student-led prayer is completely legal on school campuses, and it can be as organic as texting a group of friends and saying, "Come together Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. We're going to pray for 15 minutes before school." And even that time of prayer leading up to that club being started, I think is really preparing the grounds for that club, preparing the grounds for the gospel to be shared, even praying for hearts to be softened by the principals and the teachers who are going through that process of the club being started. And so I tell students something really organic is a really great place to start. And maybe that's what you do, is have an organic prayer meeting. And that's a time where you share devotionals and you invite people to come to hear the gospel. But that meeting, that word, has a little less commitment to, filling out all the paperwork and waiting for those processes for the schools. But I've just heard so many stories of students being denied by their school to start a club. And that breaks my heart because I know there's a space for them to meet with other Christians and they want that Christian community on campus. And so my advice to them is start a gathering, start a meeting with your friends and see what God will do from there.
How do you build prayer as a culture in the networks that you personally are a part of that not only affects those youth leaders, but then trickles down and works into the schools themselves?
Something that is really important to me is to be in my own prayer group. If I'm calling students to be in prayer groups, I want to be in a prayer group, and I want to be challenged and pray with others. And so in Kansas City, I'm really, really blessed to be a part of a group called Pray KC. And this is a group of ministry leaders from all over the city, both from Kansas and Missouri. And we get together every other week and we lay down titles and ministries, and we simply come together to seek the Lord and to pray for each other. And that is a space that's actually really impacted me and how I do ministry, and even how I encourage students to pray. that has really impacted me personally, where people, other ministry leaders are praying for me, not just for my life, but for the things that God's calling me to, for the things that I'm hearing from the Lord. It's always been this safe space to share and to be real with one another. But like I said, there's something really significant about laying down our titles and our ministry names for a minute and just being brothers and sisters in Christ and praying for one another. That has really impacted my life and how I teach students to pray. It's really about kingdom. It's really about us being children of God who are seeking our Father together, and it really has shaped me in my personal life. And something else that we've done, many of you have joined, is something that Campus Alliance helped launch a couple years ago called Pray 938. And this is just a heart to pray Matthew 9:38 over this generation, over our ministries, over our nation and our world. And this was started with a dear friend named Stacy Callender from Moms in Prayer. And the two of us got together and said, as much as we meet and as much as we talk about this stuff, how much more do we need to be talking to the Lord about this stuff and bringing it to the throne room and saying, God, lead us, help us. We need your provision. We need your help in this ministry that we're doing. And so we started to gather once a month on the second Thursday of the month, 10 a.m. Central is when we do that. And anyone is welcome to join from a ministry, reaching young people and reaching teachers in schools across the nation. And what I've seen in those meetings is answered prayer and is encouragement and making the time to be there. It always encourages me. It's in the middle of my month. It's a space where I can get quiet. I can read scripture and hear from the Lord, but also to pray into and sow seeds into the ministries that God has brought together here. And I think that's so important for us, not just to get together and collaborate about, hey, what are we doing? What can we do next? And what are next steps? I think the next step, always when we have dreams and visions from the Lord, is to pray. Is to start there together. And so that has been really impactful for me. And I know many of you have been a part of that. And that's been awesome to pray with you every month on those calls.
What tools would you recommend or that you are aware of that can be helpful for us in the area of praying not only for our own lives, but for the schools that we are working with?
The Claim Your Campus app is a free mobile app that has daily prayer content for students, and we have seen incredible partnership with other ministries. I truly mean this when I say it. I do not care if Claim Your Campus is in every school in America. I want to see prayer in every school in America. And so for me, partnerships with ministries like First Priority and FCA clubs, 9-month mission trip, Jesus clubs, wanting to give them a free tool so that when their students are gathering in their clubs, they have something every day that changes. It's constantly new. It has scripture and it has prayer points so that students don't have to feel intimidated by leading a time of prayer, or even if they're feeling overwhelmed with life, they don't have to even prepare anything. The app is right there ready for them in their hands, and it's a free resource for any student that has access on their phone. For any students that don't have access to the app, we just launched this summer a prayer booklet. It is the prayer guide in a booklet form. They can buy per semester, and it has a whole semester's worth of weekly prayer content. And knowing that some students don't have access to their phones or maybe to Wi-Fi when they get to school. And so this is a great resource for them to have in their hands. And we've had youth groups buy into that. We've had individuals buy into that. That can really encourage them and support them in leading a time of prayer. But also, just feeling equipped and confident to lead a time of prayer, whether that's 5, 10, 15 minutes during their club, or a very devoted prayer meeting at their school. And then in September, the Prayer Walk Project is something that we do as well, calling adults to be praying on campus. And I know that Rick Eubanks, he is a champion for prayer walks here on this call. We got to prayer walk some schools in Texas when me and my husband were on our road trip. And I have just seen churches, parents, teachers just wake up to the excitement and the call to prayer when they step foot on a campus. For some reason, the Lord just shows them and reveals the importance of, wow, I need to be praying for this school. Wow, I need to be on my knees more, praying things like Matthew 9:38 for real, for my context in my city. And so we have a prayer walk guide on our website. I know that Travis Deans has so many great prayer resources. And so know that it's out there and know that it's free and accessible to whoever needs those prayer tools.
Olivia, thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you do. I am so blessed to know you, and I'm so blessed to know that you are doing incredible things on our schools and encouraging so many others to do the same.
Thank you, Kevin. That means a lot from you. And for real, think the world of this group. So thankful for what you do for this generation. Thank you so much.
Hey, that was exactly what I was hoping for. Just an encouragement for us to have some practical ways to pray for our schools. So, Johnny and Steve, what were some of the things that jumped out for you through Olivia's conversation?
I tell you what, anytime I hear from Olivia, it is always a great call back to prayer and how important it is. And I'll tell you, she's in a fantastic follow on social media, because even that little bit is like a constant reminder as she's traveling and as she's sharing what God's doing. It's such an encouragement. Even hearing that story of a kid who was praying for 30 kids to give their life to Christ, like, that's the dream. Isn't that what all of us want in our youth groups? A kid who's like, man, God told me to pray for 30 kids, and then bam, that's so good. So I love hearing the stories. And I just love the constant encouragement that she and Claim Your Campus is to keep prayer at the forefront.
Yeah. And I love the reminder that it doesn't have to be some huge program. Like that reminder of, just pray. Like that's what God has asked us to do, is just really trust him with all of this. And if you're waiting for a group to get approved, pray. If you're not sure what to do next, pray. If it's just you, pray. Like, we don't have to have this whole thing figured out, and this is how we approach every week, and it's all programmed out. How about we just have a group that just prays on a regular basis for the non-Christians on our campus to meet Jesus, and for God himself to actually change our entire campus. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just pray.
And we all have those things that we are concerned about the school campus. And so, like, I think it's Craig Groeschel says that if you have enough time to worry about it, you have enough time to pray for it. And
that's good. I like
you're
that.
like, man, well, right. And a lot of the times when we do say we're praying for our school, it's like that line in the bulletin, pray for your schools. What if there was a little bit more like intentionality before that? 1 month we're praying for teachers, and 1 month we're praying for students, and 1 month we're praying for homeschooled students in the district. Like, there's a lot of ways that we can just add intentionality to pray. And I think that's one of the things that really struck me about Claim Your Campus when the app has like 5 different ways to pray when it first came out. Just intentional ways to focus attention. And it isn't just this overall prayer, just pray for schools. It was like specific ways to pray. I really love the idea of creating a booklet because, parents are not able to have their kids' cell phones in schools in some schools. And so having a booklet and then targeting middle schoolers to make it a practice like that, that's a really cool resource that they're offering this year.
And I'm totally that guy that she's preaching at right there, where she's like, all right, if you're sitting around waiting for stuff to happen, like it's the phrase I come to all the time. God can't move a parked car. Like, get moving. You know what I mean? Like it's it's one of those things where sometimes we sit back and we're just like, man, the details aren't in order. It's just not going to happen. But just get moving is so important. I've been the guy that I've been like, well, I have 6 school districts and, there's like 3 schools per. So I don't know that we can hit all 18. And it's like, okay, what if you start with 1? What if you start with 3, or that one kid that's fired up? What if you just start there? Because that one phrase she had, it really stuck with me. I actually wrote it down. The one person who says yes really matters. So good. Right there. The one person who says yes really matters. As much as we want to do everything for all people, sometimes the person in front of you who's just ready to go, they're the ones who need your attention, and they're the ones who need to get things started. And maybe the rest follows. But even if it doesn't, the one person who says yes really matters.
And what if you're the only person praying for your school? Like if you're listening all the way through this episode, there's a passion that you have that you're going, yeah, this is something I need to think about. And I don't care if you're a mom who's listening to this because you stumbled across it. There's moms in prayer groups where there's an international movement where moms can get together and they pray over the school. And you might know other Christians who would want to pray with you. And so what if after the car line, moms, that you just say, okay, Wednesday mornings, instead of going for coffee, we're just going to stop and we're going to pause and we're going to pray for our kids at school. What if you're a pastor who's listening to this and you're going, I don't know how to pray for my school? Well, just what if we dedicated a little time? It doesn't have to be 2-hour chunks. What if it's a 15-minute, that 9:36 prayer that you were talking about a little earlier, Johnny? I know people who have 9:36 a.m. on their phone that automatically goes off and they just pause and they pray. So what if we had school zone prayer zone was what the Youth Alive missionaries do. And so when you drive through a school zone, you make it a prayer zone and you intentionally pray over that school. There's a lot of little clicks that we can make that instead of it, becoming like a weighty thing that we have to do. Oh, I got to go pray for the school, but they become dedicated, deliberate things that we engage with to help us intentionally pray for schools.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the idea. I've heard from so many people, and I wish this was me in high school and it wasn't. If I go back, this is what I wanted for myself, but I kind of get envious of people some students who have got it when they were in high school and they prayed expectant prayers. And not only are they praying for the schools, but they're praying for God to actually move. And when they pass each other in the hallway, they're like, hey, did you get that opportunity to share Jesus with Johnny yet? Or did you get the opportunity to share with Wayne yet? Waiting for that opportunity and expecting God to actually move on your campus, not just empty prayers, but like, man, we are really expecting something to happen. So from students to leaders to parents, man, are we actually expecting that the powerful God of the universe can actually move in the lives of these students on these campuses?
And I would say at the bare minimum, if all you can do is a network, you can't do strategy stuff because it's really hard. You can't do big events because it's too expensive. If all you can do is get together, encourage one another, and pray, like that's a win. Because I know that I am in ministry still because me and a buddy, Jeff Dean, got together and we prayer walked at the square in our city for years together. And it was just Thursday mornings. We just went down and got away from the phone, got away from the office, and just prayed for God to do a work. And a couple of years ago, he came back to the area and he's like, man, look at God answered our prayers. Look at all the churches that are here that have started up because we were praying over the church and that God would give healthy churches and new churches. And I was here for so long that I just, saw the growth happen, but he being removed and coming back was able to remind me, look at what God has done. So those prayers are just dedicated small things that we're going to, Romans 12:1, and, don't conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed with the new renewing of our mind through prayer. And God does things incrementally and while we're just obedient and steadfast. Yeah.
That reminds me, that's one of my favorite parts of our local network meetings is when we just pause and pray for our community every month. And yeah, there's nothing, overtly special to it. We don't, have some even program or plan, or necessarily we just say, let's pause and really pray for the students in our community who don't know Jesus yet. And it's such a rich time every month that we get to do that.
So as we're wrapping this thing up, I wanna try something, all right? I'm just going for it. This was not rehearsed. You both look afraid. You should be a little.
It's false expectations that appear real.
No, this is real expectations that are real. Here we go.
Very true.
This is rear. If you had one direct application that you would encourage the listeners right now, one direct application, and it could be something you're like, man, I need this for me, but maybe it's just something you're like, I heard that's awesome. I'd love for other people to do it. One application. Are you ready? Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot first. Are you ready, Steve? Just, you're scared. I know. The fear is rising. One application. Here we go. Steve, wow us. Go.
I think it comes down to me making sure that I just put it on my calendar and put it on the schedule and make it happen. I think life gets too busy, and it really stinks to admit. Like, even as a youth pastor for many years, as someone that talks about prayer all the time, I believe in prayer, but sometimes we have to put it on our schedule and have reminders to make it happen. And maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it's okay if it is. And so that's why we have technology and we have different, notes and sticky notes or whatever it is. So I say, like, for me, like, I'm going to put it actually on my calendar, set some reminders, whatever that is for you as you guys are listening. Do whatever you got to do to remind yourself to pray on a regular basis, whether it's a location reminder. Maybe you put, when you're dropping your kids off for school or picking them up from school or whatever, like, it's a location reminder that pops off and says, like, remember to pray, or whatever that is. Just putting reminders in your life that will remind you to pray. And hopefully it begins to be a regular thing that we don't need those, but rely on those, I guess, is my biggest thing. Is like, it's okay to lean on those to get you in that habit.
See, that's why I called on Steve. Never disappoints. Right there. Schedule it. Make sure, because what gets on the schedule happens. I like it. Wayne, you're
for me, it's more of like a reality. When I first moved into this area, I was a Youth for Christ missionary, and I was the ambassador to pray for students. And so, like, Ski with the Pole, we all did rallies together. I was constantly helping Bible clubs in the area. So, like, encouraging Moms in Prayer to happen, because Moms in Prayer it's very unfamiliar in this territory. So I was constantly pushing to people to resources and being a prayer ambassador for teenagers. And so I think that the thing that stands out to me is I got to get back into that space where I'm just, I don't have to be annoying, but just that constant reminder of, like, hey, we can pray for our teens, and it matters, and prayer changes things. And I've got lots of stories about how God has answered prayers. So just being an intentional ambassador for just some of the stuff that we've talked about, because I feel like I've said it for so long, because I've been in this area for 20 years, but all the parents of of kids were in youth groups when I started this. So I guess I should probably be an ambassador again.
Love it. The last thing I'll add to this is take time to look at Claim Your Campus. Like, carve out 15 minutes to really go deep. Now, listen, this is not meant to be like, oh, shameless plug because these are our friends. This is because they have resources that you want to utilize. They have a passion that I personally need in front of me to refresh and remind myself. So carve out 15 minutes to really look at it. Don't just download the app, scroll through, and be like, I can't figure it out, and then quit. 15 minutes, deep dive into Claim Your Campus. just see what comes from that.
Yeah, Johnny, good conversation. I'm glad you did not get arrested. And so it's always great to hang out with you guys. If listeners have any comments or got ideas for a podcast, give us a shout at podcast@nnym.org. We love to find out where you guys need help, and we know a lot of people. So we'd love to invite somebody on the podcast that would help you guys as listeners out. And so if you're interested in those network conversations, you can, we'll also put a link to the next network conversation in the show notes. And you can jump on board as a network coordinator and just find a few more network coordinators that are doing something similar to you. So if you think you're all alone and you're the only crazy one in the country, you're not. And there's probably a couple hundred just like you. So we want to encourage you every single month. So that's all we have for this episode of Free Refills Podcast. We encourage you to be praying for your school. My name is Wayne Morgan. We got Johnny Radcliffe and Steve Cullum here, and we're just thankful that you are here with us. We're part of National Network of Youth Ministries. We encourage you to get together with other youth pastors and pray, because God still answers prayers.